Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Home of Gardner Minshew, starting quarterback for Las Vegas. We'll talk about that. Jaylen Warren's got an injury that might keep him out in week 1, maybe a little bit longer than that. Hopefully he can get back, though. Adam Aizer with Dave Richard and Heath Cummings, and it is a Monday morning episode, August 19th. It is draft season. I know everybody's getting their FFT Open draft started pretty soon. A lot of you out there have your home leagues coming up, and we're going to help you looking at everything that you may have missed. Hopefully you did miss it. Hopefully you went out and had an amazing weekend and didn't watch the backups in preseason, but we did, so we'll tell you what you need to know. Good morning, Heath. How was your breakfast that you just finished?
Well, I didn't quite finish it. I've got a little bit of sausage and eggs sitting over here in a bowl. I wanted to welcome, we got a new listener, it looks like, in the chat. So welcome to Josh QB4 Allen. It's good to have you. Good to have you.
Peyton Manning ranked his top 5 quarterbacks. I don't know if they were in order, but the way it was listed had Josh Allen 5th. It was Mahomes. It was Mahomes, Burrow, Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. That was his top 5. Again, I don't know if it was in order. I saw the website. I saw the story on our website. Dave, if you were going to guess Heath's breakfast, 100% would have been sausage and cheese, right?
No, I think he would have been with something a little more foofy. Heath doesn't strike me like Heath strikes me absolutely as, meat man. But I don't know if I'd necessarily say that he would have that at breakfast. He strikes me as someone that might have like a little bit of yogurt, some other type of grain.
At Heath's Meat.
Not a big grain guy. Did smoke 10 pounds of pulled pork yesterday.
That's
big meat night last night. But yeah, sausage and eggs, pretty standard. Adam said sausage and cheese. I like cheese. There's no cheese in this bowl today. But sausage and eggs, pretty standard breakfast fare. Although I enjoy a Greek yogurt here and there.
Good for you. All right, let's get to the show. We got winners and losers, risers and fallers. I'm assuming some of these guys may have been winners without actually moving up in the rankings. Maybe it just solidified what you thought. Same thing with fallers and losers. I have a lot to promote and a lot of great things that you can purchase right now to benefit St. Jude on our Tiltify page. So I'll get to that in a moment, including 6 spots in the podcast league. But Dave, why don't you start with your biggest riser or biggest winner?
My biggest winner isn't somebody that I think fantasy managers are going to go, well, maybe they will go crazy for Jayden Daniels because and to me, it's more than just what we saw in the preseason game against Miami. I thought he looked good in that game. It's the practice that I saw 2 days before the game. He's accurate and he can move and he's got speed. And we know that it's tough for a rookie quarterback to come in and be great right off the bat. He looks the part. He looks the part of a quarterback who can come in, put up good numbers right away. I moved him into my top 10. I know that Jamey was ahead of me on that. Good on him. But I do believe that he's worth taking as one of the first 10 quarterbacks on draft day. And you do need to draft another quarterback with him. But I've seen enough through the preseason, in practice, through reports. It looks like he's going to be a very, very good fantasy quarterback this year.
Okay, yeah. So he did play against some Dolphins starters, and Jayden Daniels went 10 of 12 for 78 yards, which is something that we would probably criticize like Russell Wilson or Bo Nix for. He also had 2 carries for 13 yards in about a quarter. They could not finish their drives. He led them to 2 field goals against the Dolphins. So that's Jayden Daniels. The second week in a row, we're highlighting him, and he just looks good. He's having a good preseason, even though he hasn't really been named the starter yet. We certainly expected.
So, are you kidding? They're not going to go with Jack Driscoll or who Marcus Mariota as the starter.
I'm just saying it hasn't officially. It's just funny that it hasn't officially been named.
Yeah, it's just like Bo Nix in Denver. Like it's going to happen. So, and the best part about Daniels is you don't have to reach for him.
Okay, I have more things here. I have a segment called the Likely-O-Meter. So I'm just going to sprinkle it in as we talk about these guys. Likely-O-Meter, 0 to 10. How likely is it? 0, not likely at all. 10, going to happen. Jayden Daniels is just straight up better than Anthony Richardson this season. 0 to 10 on the Likely-O-Meter.
4.
Yeah, it's going to be right around there. I think the only way that he's truly better is if Richardson misses time.
Okay, so I don't agree with that at all. I said 4, meaning because 10 was it's a lock, right? And 0 was no chance.
Yes. Right.
So 5 would be coin flip.
Yeah.
So 4, what's 5 would be a coin flip. Like it's in the middle of a lock and no chance.
Yeah.
So
4, meaning it's I think it's not that unlikely.
Yeah. All right, we see similar profiles here. So looking at NFC average draft position over the last 4 days, 50 drafts. Jayden Daniels is QB 11. Anthony Richardson is QB 6, but they're 32 picks apart. So that's maybe a way to get some value. Heath, who's your biggest riser or winner?
Trying to decide. I think I'm just going to go ahead and really throw this off the rails, Adam, and put my biggest riser and my biggest loser in the same answer. My biggest riser in no.
Okay.
No chance that you can guess.
I know.
Guess a million times.
You're moving Rashee Rice. Well, I saw you tweet about Rashee Rice. Is it not involve him?
He is a riser, and we will talk about him later. But my biggest rankings riser of the weekend was the Atlanta Falcons defense.
Oh.
They added Matthew Judon. They added Justin Simmons. They get to play the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 1. And if there is a team that has scared me to death this preseason, it's the Steelers. Their offensive line they got multiple injuries on the offensive line. They're not blocking anyone. Jaylen Warren, now their most explosive running back, has a hamstring injury. Week 1 is in serious doubt. And he goes out of the game, and the first team offense is still in. And you know what we need to do? Let's run a toss to Cordell Patterson. Arthur Smith is doing Arthur Smith things. Darnell Washington's playing just as many snaps as Pat Freiermuth, and that's not because they're in 2 tight end sets all the time. Freiermuth's playing like 55% of the snaps with the starters. The quarterbacks, neither one of them really look very good. The only thing that looks good about this offense right now is when Justin Fields takes off running. And I don't think Justin Fields is going to start.
Okay, likeliness. Ready? 0 to 10. George Pickens is a bust because the Steelers' offense is bad.
Feels like a 5.
So I did drop George Pickens outside of my top 20 wide receivers, but I'm still ahead of his ADP. So his ADP, I think, has fallen to around 6 now. I'm going to say that it is a 3. Because I don't think he's going to be a bust for like a round 6 pick as a boom bust wide receiver 3. I think it's exactly what he looks like.
And you know, the one thing that we do not want to have happen now, based on what we've seen through 2 Steelers preseason games, is the Steelers making a trade for Brandon Ayuk. Because that'll probably be very bad for not just Ayuk, but for Pickens as well.
Okay, yeah. Obviously, Pickens is like, he's kind of like Malik Nabers now, only I have more faith in the Steelers offense than Daniel Jones.
Oh, yeah.
And he's going later than Nabers, a lot later. Like looking at these NFC drafts, Malik Nabers over the last 4 days, granted, I don't know if people are going to react strongly to what they saw on Saturday. Maybe they were encouraged by Nabers, but Nabers is wide receiver 19 and Pickens is wide receiver 28. So that's still phenomenal value on Pickens.
And I will say that like I'm writing my sleepers, breakouts, and busts this week. I've already just put in Slack my mega breakouts article with 21 league winning breakouts. That will be out later today. Busts coming later in the week. But Malik Nabers is not going to be on my bust list because in CBS ADP, he has an ADP of 63rd overall, round 6. I think it's exactly where he should be going.
Okay, more on that in a minute. Here are some things that we need to promote. Okay, a lot of stuff. I got a live mock draft tomorrow night, Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. And that is on youtube.com/fantasyfootball today. I've done a terrible job promoting it, so we haven't sold a single spot. It's $50 to get in. It all goes to St. Jude. Go to tinyurl.com/draftathon2024. Everything I'm about to say is on that website. tinyurl.com/draftathon2024. So there's 11 spots available to be in my mock draft Tuesday night at 8 p.m. There are 11 spots available to be in Jamey's mock draft Thursday. The time is on there. It's probably at noon Eastern, but it's Thursday afternoon. So we've got a bunch of mock draft spots to fill. Remember, you're going to be in it, and it's going to help us create content, and you get to donate to St. Jude at the same time. Then if you go to the auction page, so if you scroll down on that page on tinyurl.com/draftathon2024, Schaefer, maybe you can go back there and scroll down and click on the auction house portion of that. You're going to see where you can bid on being on Team Adam or Team Dan for our tennis match. And if the highest bid for Team Adam gets to co-manage a team with me in the FFT League, and not the FFT Open, different league, and the highest bid on Team Schneier gets to co-manage a team with Dan. There's also an appearance on this podcast that you can earn. And we only have about 4 days left here for you to bid on this. So you got to go to the auction house portion of this website, and you can bid to be on the show or be a co-manager on my team or Dan's team in our Fantasy Football Today League.
When is the match?
The match we haven't determined yet. I mean, I'm ready to go today. Dan is obviously getting a little bit scared, so he wants to get some games under his belt because he realizes I'm better than he thought I was.
Goodness.
So I don't know when the match is, but it's happening. It will happen. Like, it's been approved by the bosses. It's up on the website. It's going to happen.
Did you cuss at Jamey in text when he leaked the footage of you practicing?
No, that was very funny stuff, though. And additionally, if you go to that auction section later today, you will see 6 spots available to be in our podcast league, which is a week from today, Monday night, August 26th at 9 p.m. Eastern. If you can't make that time, do not bid to be in the league. But you can bid on 6 spots, and we're doing it by pick. So you can bid to be the number 1 pick, the number 14 pick. I think I'm doing 1, 4, 8, 9, 12, and 14. Those picks are going to be available for you to purchase. All of it goes to St. Jude. Let's raise thousands of dollars here. And please go to tinyurl.com/draftathon2024. You'll see some entries there. Scroll down, click on the auction house. You'll see some other entries there. And I'm sorry for taking so much time to promote things, but that's what's happening. We'll be right back.
It's for a good cause.
We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. Yeah, before we get into the risers and fallers here, we go to the fallers. We talked about Keenan Allen. We have to talk about the Jaguars receivers. We have to talk about the Steelers running backs. That's what I want to do right now. I don't want to bury the lead a little bit any longer. What are you guys doing with Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren? As Warren has a hamstring injury and he could miss some time early in the season. And then we'll talk about the Raiders passing game with Gardner Minshew under center. Heath, your thoughts on the Steelers running backs as they get ready apparently for Atlanta in week 1?
We just found that out. I dropped Jaylen Warren more than I moved Najee up because I don't think that. I mean, I think Cordell Patterson might just take the Jaylen Warren touches. And I got more discouraged by the offense, so I probably would have dropped both of them if Jaylen Warren had stayed healthy. I think Warren is just outside of my top 30 running backs now. Najee is just outside of my top 20 running backs now. I would take Najee at the end of round 6.
I'm very close to you on this stuff. Najee's 21st for me among running backs. He's a round 6 pick. I did move Warren down more so than moved up Najee. I'm nervous about the Steelers offense as well. So Warren's one of my guys. I love him. But in PPR, I think he's at best a late round 8 pick. That being said, like the fact that he's hurt, there's an injury tag next to his name. I wonder if he falls a little bit in drafts. And if I'm getting him in round 10, something like that, I'm loving it because the injury's bad right now. He might miss week 1. It doesn't mean he's going to miss the whole season. And there's always still the chance that he ends up being the best running back in full PPR in Pittsburgh like he was last year.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, last year, I kind of get a little bothered by we say that a lot. He was the best running back in full PPR.
By like a 1/10 of a point.
Yeah, I know. They were basically tied in full PPR last year, and that was with Jaylen Warren having 61 catches and Najee Harris having 29. But here's something to know. Like on first and second down, Najee Harris had 245 carries. Jaylen Warren had 134 carries of his 149. So this is not, I'm sure most of you know this. This is not a third down back situation. These guys rotate in on both downs. Warren kind of owns third down, but they certainly rotate in on first and second down. So that actually could really help Najee Harris if Cordell Patterson only gets a chunk of that. There's a lot of first and second down carries there that Warren was going to take. But I want to look at DeAndre Hopkins and where he's been going, right? DeAndre Hopkins has been falling so far. Well, now we just got a report. He's probably going to play in week 1. So this is an opportunity maybe for you to take advantage of Jaylen Warren really falling. And the way you were drafting him, you probably weren't even starting him in week 1 anyway. He may not miss a lot of time. We don't love soft tissue injuries, but there's an overreaction sometimes when guys get hurt. I think it may have happened with DeAndre Hopkins. I was getting him in like round 10. So just keep that in mind. Gardner Minshew is the starting quarterback for the Raiders. Dave, is this good or bad for Davante Adams?
I don't think it's great for Davante Adams. Not that I moved him down. We figured long ago that the quarterback situation was not going to be great for Davante Adams, but I was hoping that Aiden O'Connell, A, would show enough in practice in the preseason to earn the job, and B, that he did actually show enough. I'm a little surprised. I thought O'Connell was going to be the starting quarterback, and I wore the dunce cap on Sunday when they named Minshew the starter. They're paying him to be the starter. I guess it makes sense. They like his experience. They like his mobility. As a fantasy manager, you look back to what Adams did at the end of last year when O'Connell was playing well. He averaged almost 20 PPR points per game in his last 4 games. And then you look at what Pittman did with Minshew in 12 games last year. That was just over 16 PPR points per game on, I think it was over 10 targets per game. It was a lot. And I still expect Adams to get a lot of targets. I don't think Adams is slowing down. I do buy into Davante Adams still as a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2, who will get good volume from a quarterback who knows better, but to throw to his top target, and that's Adams.
Heath, any thoughts on Minshew, who I should probably bring this up. In 3 seasons where he's, been a starter for most, if not all, he has finished 18th per game in 2019, 15th per game in 2020, and then last year was bad. But that's 2 out of 3 seasons that actually was like a streamable fantasy starter.
Yeah, I think the nice thing is that you can feel more confident drafting him in a 2 quarterback league. That's the only place that you're drafting Gardner Minshew. He was a riser for me. I moved him up 2 or 3 spots just on the certainty that he's going to be starting at least week 1. And this is what I didn't know for sure that Minshew was going to start week 1. But I thought with the contract they gave him, unless they just wanted to give the deference to Aiden O'Connell. And I think what happened, Dave, was that you mushed Aiden O'Connell. Like you said, he just won the job, and then he threw a pick 6 not too long after that. And the one later said was like, we want the guy that's not going to turn the ball over. And Aiden O'Connell throws a pick 6.
Meanwhile, Minshew almost had a pick 6 of his own earlier in the game.
He was so bad. He was so bad.
But honestly, he also didn't have Devontae. Neither one of them had Davante Adams.
You're right. They didn't have Davante Adams.
Who I guess is dealing with some minor injury of his own.
That's never fun. Davante Adams, a round blank pick for you.
3.
4.
Dave, can I put up the fantasy receipts tweet?
Go, please. It's hilarious. I'm a big fan of fantasy receipts. So I can't be a fan of theirs and then get upset when they get me.
It's not even week 1 yet, and we already got receipts. A quote tweet, Dave Richard, Aiden O'Connell, welcome to the starting lineup.
I sent that out after Minshew was done in the second preseason game. So before O'Connell even hit the field, I sent that out. That's how confident I was that O'Connell would get the job. #oops.
That's the fantasy football version of never say that it can't get worse.
Hey, listen, it can get better, because if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FANTASY and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code FANTASY. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code FANTASY when you sign up. All right, it's time now for our biggest faller or loser. And Heath, who do you got?
I thought I already said mine. The Pittsburgh.
Let's talk about
Steelers.
the Steelers a third time.
George Pickens outside of my top 20, Pat Freiermuth outside of my top 12, Jaylen Warren outside of my top 30. I even dropped Russell Wilson a couple of spots. So yeah, I'm really not pleased with what I've seen from the Steelers. And in fairness, several of these guys I'm dropping and just like still have them ranked where their ADP is or where Dave and Jamey do. I was higher on them, but they were big losers for me because I was a big loser for thinking any of them might be good.
So that includes Freiermuth because this was a fallback option for all of you, I think, at tight end. Now
I'd rather draft Dalton Schultz.
Oh dear God.
Yeah.
Who is also a fallback option, except he's on a team that might throw 35 touchdowns and he might catch 7 of them.
Okay. Dave, who's your biggest loser?
My biggest faller is Keenan Allen, who I thought looked slow and couldn't separate from backup cornerbacks for Cincinnati. He did better versus zone, just not as explosive. And, this should be expected for a guy who's as old as Keenan Allen. But on top of that, you just see how Rome Odunze seems to always be on the same page as Caleb Williams. And we saw it in the second preseason game. We saw it in the first preseason game. I saw it in mini camp practice. You read about it in training camp practice. I moved Odunze over Keenan Allen, more so because I just don't want Keenan Allen on my fantasy team. I think he's going to be I don't think there's a chance he sees anywhere even near 60% of the target volume that he saw last year. I am nervous that he's not going to be a big touchdown threat. I love the Chicago offense now. I think they're going to be good, but I think Odunze could be more explosive, even if he had the same amount of targets as Keenan Allen from week to week. So I made that move. Keenan Allen is very low in my rankings, including full PPR. And I don't see a spot for him where I think he can even be a reliable wide receiver 3 from week to week. I think it's going to fall apart for him this year because he's sharing the field with Odunze, with DJ Moore, with all the other factors in Chicago too.
I think somebody made a good point in the chat, and I'm not necessarily. Forgot that I needed to move Rome Odunze up a little bit. I still have Keenan Allen over Rome. Not necessarily disagreeing with anything Dave said, but someone in the chat, Donovan, said Keenan Allen has always been slow, and that's 100% true. I think he ran like a 4.6 or a 4.7.
That might be true.
He's a slow, great wide receiver.
But what did we love about Keenan Allen for all those years in LA?
Guys, have we mentioned his weight though? Because this is
I don't know if that part's true or not.
Albert Breer went to camp, reported that he was at 220 pounds. This is at least being talked about, that he looks heavy. And you're right. I don't know if it's true, but if he looks slow, I thought it was worth bringing up. Some people, I think, like Jacob Gibbs, I saw was tweeting about it. He seems to be concerned, at least about the reports. And I don't really know what to make of it. I'll tell you what I make of it, honestly, is like, I feel like I'm way too low on DJ Moore. I haven't drafted DJ Moore once, and he Odunze doesn't play that much. Like Odunze's doing all these things when Keenan Allen and DJ Moore are out of the game.
They said he's 220.
Yeah,
because Pro Football Reference last year had him listed at 211. I'm looking at his combine because I was looking for the 40 time, and it was 4.7. And that was like
10 years ago.
And he was 206 10 years ago. So if he's only gained 14 pounds in 10 years, he's doing a lot better than we are.
Yeah, well, we're also not professional wide receivers. What I was getting at with Keenan Allen is that, yes, he wasn't a streaker down the field, but he was able to separate with his route running. He had enough burst and quickness when he planted that's what helped him get open. He had precise route running. He wasn't getting that against man coverage. Let me see who was covering him for Cincinnati. You want names? These are guys you've never heard.
It was 230, I think, by the way. But
fifth round cornerback Josh Newton was shutting down Keenan Allen. Backup cornerback Jaylen Davis was shutting down Keenan Allen.
All right, you're fading Keenan Allen.
I'm fading Keenan Allen. Give me Rome Odunze. I'm still fine getting DJ Moore. Where do I have him ranked? I think I have him as a round 4 pick.
Okay, well, that's probably why I haven't been getting him, because he does go in round 3 a lot. But if we're fading Keenan Allen, then probably good news for DJ Moore, not just for Rome Odunze.
And I would add that if Keenan Allen isn't getting open and Keenan Allen isn't able to make big plays, and he's basically a de facto tight end, you'll see Rome Odunze eventually take over the number 2 receiver role in Chicago.
All right. Likeliness, one other thing, unrelated to what we've been talking about, but related to preseason football. Likeliness, 0 to 10. Oh, I think I was calling it the likely-o-meter earlier. Raheem Mostert averages more fantasy points per game than Devon Achane.
5.
He was the starter and the short yardage back. Like, you want to talk about roles in Saturday's game? Mostert had a much better role than Devon Achane.
Devon Achane was playing into the second quarter with the backups. just like he played in garbage time last year.
Yeah. He also played with the starters. He also played on the opening drive.
Yeah, after Mostert had like 5 plays in a row.
I think it's a 50-50. It's a coin flip. The reason that we have Achane so much higher is and maybe this is wrong. I'm worried about both of them getting hurt. I'm more worried about Mostert.
Sure.
Okay. Hey, hit the like button. We got 1,100 people watching. Please hit that like button. We'd appreciate it. If you're new to the show, please hit the subscribe button and join our fun, because we have podcasts every day. We also have live streams tomorrow night. You can join us for a mock draft, youtube.com/fantasyfootballtoday. But if you're here, hit that like button and hit subscribe. I wanted to play some podcast league entries. We'll do that in a little bit. That's for the leftovers league next Tuesday night. But I want to tell you, I made up a new stat. You ready to hear about a brand new stat?
Oh, yes. The last time you made up a stat, you hated it after
what was it?
Fantasy point per percentage started or something.
Started fantasy points. He never did make the list. I had last year. Johnny Lazar made that list for us, I believe. But then Adam disputed the actual list. So like Aizer stats, there's not a hard, and I assume this stat as well. Like, you can't actually plug in a formula to calculate this stat because there have to be exceptions made for the guys that Adam wants to make exceptions for.
No, this was easy. I was trying to quantify how good Anthony Richardson was last year. So how about this? Fantasy point per attempt, which is just fantasy point per pass attempt plus rush attempt.
So there is a stat called fantasy point per drop back.
Yeah, I mean, that includes like sacks and throw and income and all that. Sacks, yeah. But this was that minus sacks, I guess. Right? He averaged 0.69 fantasy points per pass attempt plus rush attempt, Anthony Richardson. 0.69 fantasy points every time he threw or ran. Josh Allen averaged 0.64. I would be willing to bet Anthony Richardson was clearly number one in this metric last year.
Well, you didn't check it for everybody?
I mean, I checked it for Jalen Hurts, and Allen was ahead of Hurts, and Richardson was ahead of both of them. So I did not feel like it was necessary to check it for everyone, because those were the two best quarterbacks in fantasy. So I just wanted to bring that up. Anthony Richardson was that good. And that's actually pretty significant. 0.69 versus 0.64. Richardson better than Allen last year.
When you consider that probably 35 to 40 rush attempts per game, rush attempts plus pass attempts per game. You're looking at that's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen again this year, but that's how good he was last year. I have a favorite player who kind of became my favorite player last year, but he's certainly my favorite player now. It's Taysom Hill. How great is Taysom Hill? This guy does everything. He was laying blocks as a fullback. He scored a short yardage touchdown. He played tailback yesterday. There is no handcuff for Alvin Kamara, because Kamara gets hurt. Taysom Hill is going to kill any value for Jamal Williams, but over the last 3 seasons, he has 16 rushing touchdowns and Kamara has 11. But just appreciating Taysom Hill for being the football player that he is. Congratulations, Taysom Hill. You're my favorite player.
This is so on brand for you to take the guy that tortures fantasy managers the most and make him your favorite player.
Has he hurt your round 4 Kamara strategy at all?
No, because like I said, he's out touchdowned Kamara by 5 over the last 3 years, and even with that, Kamara's had 2 elite seasons in half and full PPR. So yeah, I know he's going to take touchdowns away from Kamara. That's what's great about Kamara. He doesn't even need touchdowns to be a round 4 pick. Just needs the catches, and they have nobody to throw to other than Olave.
So I've heard all the way since I think I want to say February that Taysom Hill was going to be a bigger part of the offense. The problem is where do you use him in fantasy? Because he's not RB eligible unless your commissioner says, okay, he's RB eligible. And so if he's QB eligible and that's it, hard to use him as your starting quarterback, maybe as a bye week replacement in a super flex league. If he's tight end eligible, now we're talking, because then I think that he could end up being decent. I know that Heath just recently joined a dynasty league that's tight end premium, and you got Taysom Hill with a late pick.
Yeah. And that's the thing is you really have to check your league settings and see where he's eligible. Maybe he'll be eligible at running back in some leagues. Somebody should make him eligible at all 4 positions. That's where he plays. He plays them all. Make him OW, offensive weapon. You can start him anywhere.
Flex. That would be fun.
All right, let's
anything to make fantasy more fun. I'm all for that. Would definitely work. But yes, I've heard that Hill's going to be a contributor this year. It's just a matter of how can you fit him into your lineup.
News and notes. Pittsburgh center Nate Herbig is going to miss maybe this season. Rookie Zach Frazier is likely to start at center. And they played
I think Frazier's better anyway.
Okay, well, he played a lot. They played a number of their starters for a lot of their preseason week 2 game, and it didn't go well.
No.
But, we thought that, I don't know. I don't want to judge anyone too harshly.
The tackles were abysmal, like true turnstile. And so that's why it's hard to judge Fields and Wilson, but they didn't look good either.
DeAndre Hopkins, as I mentioned, expected to play in week 1. Kyle Shanahan hopes that rookie wide receiver Ricky Pearsall for the Niners, he'll be ready for week 1. By the way, people are telling me to say team names more, so I will try to do that because I know not all of you are diehard football fans, so I get that. Patriots head coach Gerard Mayo did not rule out Drake May as the week 1 starter. Seattle receiver Tyler Lockett should be ready for week 1. He's recovering from a leg injury. Buffalo wide receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling has a neck injury, hopefully not too serious. Cleveland has major issues at offensive tackle. Both of their starters are currently on the PUP list, hopefully coming off soon, recovering from off-season surgery. These are Cleveland Browns starting offensive tackles. 3 offensive tackles for the Browns left with injuries on Saturday. So that is a trouble spot for the Browns. Tennessee linebacker Arden Key has his 6-game suspension overturned. Good news for them. The Vikings signed cornerback Stefon Gilmore to a 1-year deal, and the Giants had one pretty significant injury. Linebacker Micah McFadden, hopefully he's okay. Didn't see an update there, and also defensive lineman Ryder Anderson. Was not a good day for the Giants offense or defense against Houston on Saturday.
It was once they played the backups.
Yeah, got much better. Winners. Let's see. Let's do a few minutes here. Jamey gave a list. He was supposed to come on. He wasn't able to come on today. But if we look at his list, Najee Harris is a winner. We agree with that.
Sort of.
Brian Thomas.
Yes.
This one I don't really get. And I actually have some encouraging metrics there that I can share on Brian Thomas, but why do you agree that Brian Thomas is a winner?
Well, because we were barely drafting him, and now it looks like he's going to be a key component for the Jaguars. Over the last week, the reports have been really, really positive on what he can do to contribute to this offense. And I don't think he's going to be the number 1 target getter there, but he's got that upside that we look for. And if you saw it from Xavier Worthy and you liked it, if you saw it from Keon Coleman and you liked it, although Keon's a different type of receiver, then you've got to look at what Brian Thomas can do and expect him to be a possible number 3 receiver by the time the season ends.
I did not see a lot from Keon Coleman that I liked, but the Worthy Thomas duo, I just kind of keep going back and forth with. And I think they're so similar because Kelce and Evan Ingram, Rashee Rice and Christian Kirk, I think the Chiefs competition for targets a little bit more difficult than Jags to overcome, but Patrick Mahomes versus Trevor Lawrence, they're in very, very similar situations. I hope your metrics, Adam, are on how good Trevor Lawrence was throwing the deep ball last year.
Oh, no. My metric was that Brian Thomas in preseason week 2, his average route depth was something like 10.8 yards. And that would have been the 5th highest among receivers with 50.
What was it in preseason week 1?
Yeah, I'm getting there. It was a lot lower with Gabe Davis on the field, but that was only 5 routes, but his average route depth was 6.7 yards. You don't want Brian Thomas to have an average route depth of 10.8 yards. That's my fear, that he's just a deep ball guy. He's not going to be a consistent fantasy contributor. But if we see that he's running shorter routes, more fantasy relevant or fantasy, better for fantasy routes with Gabe Davis on the field, because Gabe Davis didn't play this past week, I think that's really encouraging. I just think for Keon Coleman and Brian Thomas, it's not like they're doing that much this preseason. Keon Coleman is playing a ton, and that's great. But he's doing almost nothing with it.
Well, and he's getting, the thing for Thomas was more about practice reports and vibes than it was what he did in a preseason game. The switch seemed to have flipped for him last week or the week before, and they are very happy with what they're getting out of him. I currently still have him ahead of Worthy, but they're just back to back, kind of holding hands, marching up my rankings together.
Yeah,
that sounds about right. I saw Thomas beat press coverage multiple times in the first week of preseason. That was encouraging. I saw the crossing routes. We saw some of that at LSU from Thomas. That's something that he can add. The over routes. So he's not just, go ball, post route type of receiver. He's added to his route tree. That's what you want. You want that versatility. The best receivers always have versatility in the routes. It makes them harder to defend. And then they're great and they're explosive on top of that. It's exactly what you want in fantasy. The problem is that if you're drafting Brian Thomas, you can't start him right away. And his ceiling might be wide receiver 3, might be a boom bust flex. So I think at best round 8 is the time to go after Brian Thomas. And you might even be able to find him into round 11.
Wow. Round 8 seems early.
Yeah. But I'm excited about him.
I don't necessarily agree that the ceiling's round 3. I think he could have Calvin Ridley's opportunity from last year, and Calvin Ridley expected fantasy points were a lot higher than what he actually produced.
That would be sick.
Like
that sounds
they lost a ton of production to drops, standing out of bounds in the end zone, and pass interference penalties.
Pass interference for sure. All right, listen. I think one of the questions is, because Jamey also has Christian Kirk as a faller. I don't want to speak for him. I'll let him talk about it on tomorrow's show. But who's going to play in 2 receiver sets? I don't buy the premise that Christian Kirk is not playing on 2 receiver sets. I think that's what we've seen so far in the preseason, and Kirk's got a minor injury and didn't play in this game. But that's what they tried in week 1 last year. And Christian Kirk barely played, and Zay Jones played ahead of him. And that was the last time they did that, basically. So, I don't know that Brian Thomas is playing in 2 receiver sets. Probably not in week 1, not that much, maybe. He probably has to work his way up. But all right, I'm sorry, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here.
Did they run a lot of 2 tight end sets last year?
They did not run a lot of 3 receiver sets. They were not a big 3 receiver set team, percentage wise. They ran a lot of plays. I think they were something like 18th in 3 receiver sets. But they were like 11th or 12th in plays.
So that would be a surprise if they stuck with that this year after they made the moves that they made, taking Thomas in round 1, paying Gabe Davis. They're still paying Christian Kirk. I think it's kind of a different situation this year. I would imagine they'll be in 3 receiver sets more often. Maybe not all the time. They won't be dominant with it, but certainly more than they did last year.
All right, here we go. Let's take another break, come back, talk about more risers and fallers. We got to talk about Rashee Rice, who's a 3rd-round pick now for Heath, I believe. Ken Walker is a riser for Dave. Zach Ertz. Pat Fryermuth is a faller. We talked about that. The Texans receivers. We'll be back. And I think we should talk about Nabers. Why not? We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
Well, you need your sports news anywhere?
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
So Jamey's other risers were Tank Bigsby. He certainly carved out a role for himself for Jacksonville.
Seems like it.
Greg Dulcich, although I thought Troutman was playing ahead of him.
Yeah, they like to use both those guys. I think Troutman will be on the field on rushing downs, and you'll see Dulcich more in passing situations.
We actually, I think those winners were sent before the Broncos game.
Okay, yep, you're right.
That was more of a vibes and practice riser, I think, and it was for me as well. But I mean, Sean Payton does Arthur Smith things as well.
Yep. And I'll tell you, it's not worth, it is worth taking a shot on Dulcich late. It's the worst that can happen. But I wouldn't call him a streaming tight end. I wouldn't draft him and then use him in week 1.
All right. So Heath's risers, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Falcons DST, and Gardner Minshew. Let's focus on the Chiefs receivers here. Well, obviously, gotta be right.
Yeah, I think what Worthy did and the Chiefs' obvious intention of getting him involved and having some success, you got to bump him up a little bit. It wasn't a big move. He went up a spot or 2. I just didn't want to leave him out. Dwayne McFarland had a good tweet from last night. Rashee Rice on 3 drives with Patrick Mahomes this preseason, 94% route participation, 38% target share. He was a top 12 wide receiver for me in March when I first did my projections. I tweeted about this earlier. If you get him basically to a 22% target share, he's a top 12 wide receiver. He last year, the last 6 games of the year, when he finally started playing even 67% of the snaps on a per game basis, had a 25% target share. Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy are going to impact that. But I think the other thing we saw is when Worthy is taking the top off the defense like that, defenses are going to have no choice but just to go back to shell. They're not going to be able to play one high at all. And so I think that we're going to see Rashee Rice is going to have another Debo type year in terms of yak. I expect more yak than ADOT. And I think he probably, if he stays healthy and doesn't get, again, the other elephant in the room is the suspension, that everything I'm searching and everything I can find is everybody saying we have no indication anything's coming.
Has he been charged yet?
He's not been charged.
So that's the first step. Once he's charged, then a suspension might come. But
generally speaking, unless it's domestic violence, the league has waited until not a player is charged, but until the case is settled. We had this issue with Alvin Kamara a couple of years ago. I think he's getting suspended in 2025. If he plays 17 games, I think he's a top 12 wide receiver. I've got him at 15 right now, only because there's still that tiny risk that he might get suspended.
Wow.
I'm a little more hesitant on Rice. And I get what you're saying. I would take everything from last year and throw it out the window, because the Chiefs were desperate for wide receiver help last year, and they didn't have Brown. They didn't have Worthy. Kelce was a mess until they got into the playoffs, and they needed Rashee Rice in a major way. This year, they added guys to take pressure off of both Kelce and Rice. And as for the preseason targets, I think Kansas City, I wouldn't look too much into the targets in the preseason. I would look into the snap share, like you talked about. He played on almost every single snap with Mahomes. I would expect that to be the case. But at one point in the preseason game against Detroit, he had 4 targets in a row. I don't think you're going to see that very often from the Chiefs, where they're just going to go after a guy. I think they were just trying to get him work and see what he could do, getting a touch after touch after touch. Worthy had 3 touches in a row, or target/touches in a row in the game. His ADOT was low. That's something that concerns me a little bit. And I went back and looked. The number of routes that Rice ran this preseason that went 6 or more yards, the answer is 3. And he's ran a total of 17 routes. So 3 out of 17. Last year, he ran 538 routes. Just 123 of them went for 6 or more yards. That's 23%. So if you view Rice as short to mid-range guy, absolutely somebody that could benefit from the top taking off from what Worthy does or what Marquise Brown does, for sure. He can get to that point. Can he get to 8 catches for 90 yards without even thinking about a touchdown from week to week? I'm nervous about that for Rice. So I can't put him as a top 15 receiver. Too many mouths to feed. No guarantee that he's going to get huge volume like he did in a preseason game against Detroit with Mahomes. And I think he's just a much, I think he's if you're talking about 15 among wide receivers.
Okay. Would you guys rather have Rashee Rice or Malik Nabers?
Rice.
I'll take Nabers.
I know it's going to be Rice, like for Heath over everyone, but Dave.
Well, why not? Hold on. This is simple. Heath, give me the 4 receivers you have under Rice in your rankings right now.
The 4 receivers I have under Rice.
So this is directly under him.
Okay. So that would be Drake London.
Okay.
Cooper Kupp. T. Higgins. Nico Collins.
I might see it with Higgins. The other 3, I just think have so much more upside that I couldn't bring myself to take Rice ahead of them.
And that's the thing is, like, that's why I get frustrated sometimes with upside talk.
Mm-hmm.
Is it's hard for me to imagine how somebody who's never really done anything could have so much more upside than somebody who's could be the number 1 target for Patrick Mahomes.
Well, but you're saying Nico Collins and
Drake London.
No. I thought you were talking about Nabers, but I guess that makes sense for London too.
No, Nabers, I wouldn't say that because he's never played in the NFL.
Right. But in the case of London, I think you have to acknowledge that his situation is far better than it was in his first couple of years.
Yeah, of course. Is it better?
The name of the game in fantasy is projecting forward.
Question here. Where would you have Rashee Rice in half PPR?
Was that the Mario Brothers?
It was Mario, yeah.
He'd still be about 15th. He does drop in non, but in half he's still about 15.
All right.
Pew, pew, pew. He's down in my non-PPR, behind Higgins, behind Terry McLaurin. I've got him 28th in non-PPR. So he'd probably be right in that same range in half.
All right, Dave's risers. Jayden Daniels, Roma Dunze, talked about them. How about Ken Walker? What do you have to say about Ken Walker?
I think he's going to end up being a better value than we give him credit for. It looks like Zach Charbonnet, this is practice report talk, just isn't getting it done, and now he might be sore on top of it. I've heard that Walker is going to be a consistent factor in this offense. They want to run the ball a lot. They want to get him involved in the passing game. We've heard offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb say that. I'm buying in. This is a young running back who's got huge potential. We saw it last year. There were games, almost every game when he had at least 15 touches, it was boom or bust, but he had a good average in those games. I think he can be more consistent and still carry the same type of upside. That's better than running backs like Kamara, Mixon, Connor. So I've got him ahead of those guys. I can't, as much as I'm a little nervous about James Cook, I can't put him ahead of James Cook in full PPR because I know that Cook can catch the ball. We haven't seen that from Walker yet. And we know that Walker does have some injury concerns, but I'm willing to take the risk on him in round 3 if I'm really in need of a running back, because I know how sus it gets once you get to the Kamara Mixon group from Walker. And I think he's very good in non-PPR as well.
Walker or Achane?
I've got Walker ahead of Achane. I'm not an Achane guy.
Walker over Achane. Okay, how about you, Heath?
You know, I agree with Dave, and I hadn't moved Walker. I just moved Walker ahead of Kamara because I basically have them projected for the same thing, and Kamara's age is reason enough for that. I'm going Walker over Achane as well. He's my RB 13.
Okay, all right. Courtland Sutton, Greg Dortch. These are risers for you in different areas of the draft, Dave.
Yeah, Dortch is just late round PPR dude. If you want to go and get him, you can probably find him literally with your last pick. I don't think he's like a breakout candidate or anything like that, but could be good for around 10 PPR points per game. Sutton stood out to me as the clear number 1 receiver in Denver, and Bo Nix has stood out to me as a capable starting quarterback for Denver. Mm-hmm. And so when you draft Sutton, you're doing it in round 8+. I don't know what his ADP is. You can look it up for me, but I'm sure it's very low. He's somebody who should be a wide receiver 3 for fantasy managers. He could even fill in as a flex in full PPR.
10-11 turn.
Wide receiver 44. Sutton's wide receiver 44 over the last 4 days on NFC.
Yeah, he's
not doing much, by the way. I mean, like, seems like they're spreading the ball around, but I understand, you know.
I think Sutton's going to lead this team in targets. He has for like 4 of the last 5 seasons. I don't think they have a choice. Like, you look at their other receivers, it's Mims, it's Reynolds, it's
Tim Patrick.
I
was going to say
Tim Patrick's back.
Yeah,
Patrick's back, and he looked good in the precission game.
In my top 200.
Take it away.
Marvin Mims, I think, is just a gadget player. There were a couple of guys Dave mentioned, like, I didn't put them on my list because they are very late round guys, but Tim Patrick and Van Jefferson looks like.
Oh, you're stealing my notes. I mean, I didn't put it in the notes, but I was about to say, like Patrick and Van Jefferson. Thank you. These are deep league guys that are the number 2 receivers. Yeah. And I think I got to talk about Jaleel McLaughlin too. Jaleel McLaughlin. It looks like Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin are the top 2 running backs for
they are
for sure. Is shocking.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like P. Ryan. I don't know if he's going to make the team. That's somewhat valuable. I mean, look, I think McLaughlin goes too late. You know, it's like McLaughlin.
So does Javonte.
Javonte, I know you like him a lot. Would you guys take Javonte Williams or Jonathan Brooks?
I've got Williams over Brooks.
Williams.
I have Williams. Heath's already had him in his top 24. Williams has made my top 24 over the last few days.
Javonte or Aaron Jones?
Javonte.
I have Jones a couple spots higher. I'm not going to fight you on it. They're 3 spots apart in my overall rankings.
How about
Javonte over DeAndre Swift? Anybody?
Oh, yeah.
Anybody?
Oh, yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about that because Swift is barely playing, which is probably a good sign.
Yes.
Khalil Herbert is another guy that's going too late, even if they're just auditioning him for a potential trade or something like that. Swift didn't play. Roschon Johnson didn't play. In week 1, Swift played 2 or 3 snaps, but Khalil Herbert is getting a lot of run. He's always a good player. If he's just the handcuff to Swift, then like he is just like an afterthought in drafts.
Yep. I moved him up.
Okay.
How about the idea of drafting him with your last pick before any news breaks? And then if week 1 comes and he's still on the Bears, you're probably cutting him before the games begin.
No, I think he's like, if I was going to draft somebody's backup running back, DeAndre Swift's a fine guy who's backup to draft.
I know, but there's still a chance that even if Herbert's the starter, he's going to lose reps to Roschon. If Roschon didn't play in that preseason game, that might mean that he's already locked in to that passing downs role that the coaching staff really liked him in last year. And that's the role that he was working in minicamp too.
Right. And Herbert's never been a good pass blocker. So his upside's capped. I'll say that. But he could be the short yardage guy for the Chicago Bears. I think I'd love to see how that's going to play out. We're not going to know until week 1, but it is possible that he plays more than people thought. All right, losers. Heath's fallers are Freiermuth and Zach Charbonnet. I don't know if we have to expand on that.
No. I had Charbonnet in that Trey Benson group of they don't project that high, but I'm pretty excited about them, and I've actually dropped him below that group.
Dave's fallers are Stefon Diggs, Tank Dell, Keenan Allen, and Jaxon Smith-Njigba. All right, we do have to talk about these guys here, except for Keenan Allen. We already covered him. My question for you, if Diggs and Dell are fallers, why isn't Nico Collins a faller? Let me give you, I don't care so much about these stats, but with CJ Stroud on the field during the preseason, like Nico Collins has 2 targets. Tank Dell has 2 targets. Diggs has 1. Dalton Schultz has 5. Brevin Jordan has 2. Nico's run the most routes, but everybody I mentioned except for Brevin Jordan has been between 9 and 13 routes. I just like, should Nico Collins really be going 2 rounds ahead of Diggs and Dell?
It's questionable, but I do think he is going to be their best receiver. I think he's going to end up being their number 1 and their go-to guy. And I think that there will be weeks where Diggs and Dell disappoint. And so maybe it's just more about me being too excited about Diggs and Dell and having them both as round 5 options. And even in full PPR, I've moved them down a little bit. I just think that there could be too much cannibalizing between those 2 guys. Like, it's super easy to take Rashee Rice over Diggs and Dell now. I think Godwin belongs over both Diggs and Dell. Terry McLaurin ahead of both Diggs and Dell. And I like Diggs better than Dell. As much as Dell is fun to watch, I think he will have more spike weeks than Diggs, but I think Diggs will be a little bit more consistent, maybe a little bit more boring for fantasy managers in full PPR. But
I agree exactly with the last 2 sentences Dave said, and it's why I have Dell over Diggs.
I have Dell over Diggs in non-PPR. But in full PPR, I still think Diggs could match Dell in terms of touchdowns. I think I'll have more catches. It's the yardage that Dell should have an edge on Diggs.
Here's the problem I have with all of these arguments. Like, they make total sense. I don't want to talk myself out of the Texans offense. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to pass on the Texans offense so I can take Chris Godwin or Terry McLaurin when I feel like CJ Stroud could compete for the MVP this year. I know it might be frustrating.
Right. That's why you should draft Stroud, not his receivers.
Yeah, but there's better quarterback value late in the draft than wide receiver value. You know, you can get a starting quarterback in round 10. You can get your wide receiver 4 in round 10. But I don't know. It's like I see all the concerns. I don't want to miss out on all 3 of those. I don't want to have no shares of Texans receivers. So it's a tough balance of trying to find consistency versus upside. You know, I guess there's not really much to take away there, but that's just what's on my mind. I get it. Every time I see one of those Texans guys, I'm like, oh, it's going to be annoying. But man, you see the potential in 2 weeks ago with Tank Dell. Caught 1 pass. It was like a 20-something yard touchdown, whatever it was.
It was great. He was in sync with Stroud, and it's the kind of stuff that we've seen before from those 2. But I don't know if we're going to see it enough from week to week.
JSN, why is he a faller for you?
If I'm liking Kenneth Walker, then JSN might be someone who falls, and Lockett has already fallen. And I think this is just like Diggs and Dell. I might've been too excited about him. And now I'm getting nervous that he won't have the massive breakout season as the Seahawks offense is currently constructed.
Dave, would you like to hear what you and I would sound like if we were on painkillers?
Sure.
Okay, like heavy painkillers, because this was a podcast league submission. Take a listen.
Dave, I always say that The difference between sleepers and breakouts is sleepers when you weeks, breakouts when you leagues. TM. You agree with that?
It needs to be on a shirt.
It does
Yes.
be on a shirt.
Yeah. We should make you that shirt, size extra small.
All right, Dave, there we go. A trip to the dark side. I don't know if that's painkillers or like,
That's what I sound like when I'm in Vegas.
yeah, mushrooms. I'm not sure. I have very little experience in this area, but it's on something. All right, Jamey had some followers. I'll let him talk about those on tomorrow's show. There's another podcast league entry. I'll play it for you on tomorrow's show because I want to make sure we cover everything here. I think we should talk about what we saw from Daniel Jones and how it relates to Malik Nabers. I could see people coming out of that game encouraged by Malik Nabers. He had 4 catches for 54 yards on 6 targets. He did do almost all of that against the backups, but he also like dropped a pass on the first possession where he went right by Derek Stingley, who might be one of the best cornerbacks in football this year. Daniel Jones, you can't play quarterback any worse than what he did, I think, in the first half of that game. But did you see enough from Nabers? We might get some different answers here. Dave, what are your thoughts on Nabers?
I think that he is going to end up making some huge plays and make his quarterbacks look better than they actually are. I'm not sure which play you were talking about with the drop.
3rd down on the opening possession. He beat Stingley right off the line of scrimmage. Actually a good throw from Daniel Jones, and he just dropped it.
He only got one hand on the ball, right?
Yeah, I think that was a high throw.
No, it was a good throw. I'm not gonna. He didn't make many, but that.
I mean, grading on the
it was
Daniel
high and a
Jones
little in
curve, it
front
was
of Nabers.
pinpoint.
Nabers almost still caught it with one hand.
Either way, did you move Nabers at all based on? Okay, Heath.
But I already have Nabers ranked insanely high because I'm excited by the prospect of a receiver who can instantly accelerate and pick up a ton of targets from game to game, posting good numbers for fantasy. That's somebody I'd like to have a piece of.
Okay.
I tweeted this. I think I quote tweeted you and I said it. Like it was Malik Nabers' game was an ultimate confirm my priors game, no matter what side you were on, because you could absolutely watch that game and say Daniel Jones is so bad. There's no way you can draft one of his wide receivers in round 3. Especially like I think what they did against the backups is maybe getting a little bit more credit than I would give.
Yeah.
Because they played a quarter against the starters and it was so disastrously bad. But I didn't move him. In fact, he might have gone up a couple spots because a couple guys fell behind him. He's a round 6 wide receiver for me. He's awesome. And he showed that. The situation's awful. And it showed that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
No, it's definitely safer to just like pass on Nabers, which is basically what you're doing, Heath, because you're never going to get him in round 6. There's going to be somebody in every league that reaches for Nabers.
But
so
if I'm in I would guess I'm going to be in several home league drafts where he's going to fall to round 4 or 5. I'll probably draft him in 1 or 2 of those. So I have some because normal people are not going to draft Malik Nabers in round 3.
No, I don't know. Normal. What do you mean normal people? Like the average fantasy player? When do you think they'll draft Malik?
Well, his current ADP on CBS is round 6. And that's including our drafts where he goes in round 3. So that's what I mean.
But he's such a riser, like I feel like
he went backwards last week in ADP.
On our side. All right. We'll see. I'm curious to know. Well, when did he go in the draft that we did on Tuesday night? He went in the 3rd round, didn't he? Well, on the draft we did on Friday, he went in the 4th round. That was with listeners. Tuesday night, I feel like he went in the 3rd round. And that was like 2 of us and 10 or 11 listeners.
Looks like Fantasy Pros consensus, he's pick 44.
Draft Sharks, he's 411.
So
let's say 4th round for Nabers.
Okay. Yeah.
I took him at the 3-4 turn in a recent draft. Mock draft. Can I get your thoughts on Bo Nix?
I think he runs the Broncos offense flawlessly. He's got good mobility. He's accurate in the short range. His receivers can get open. He's using his tight ends and his running backs. I don't think he's any better than I think he's better than Gardner Minshew. I'd rather have him than Minshew in a super flex league because I think he could be the starter all year. And I think he's good enough to put decent numbers on Courtland Sutton from a week-to-week basis.
Okay. Some running backs to mention. Bucky Irving. Todd Bowles spoke very highly of him. Bucky Irving basically got the feature role in week 2 with Rachaad White not playing.
And in week 1 as well.
Yeah, and if you're going to gamble on a backup running back, you could do worse than the guy that's running behind a guy who has averaged like 3.7 yards per carry in his career. Rachaad White much better to me in the passing game than the running game. Ray Davis, would you say he's the clear number 2 guy? You think Ty Johnson's still a factor, or is Ray Davis the clear guy behind James Cook?
You'll see some of Davis and Johnson, but probably more Davis, and he's the more physical running back of the 2.
Good bounce back week for Trey Benson, 9 carries for 43 yards. But keep in mind, Amari DeMarcado is going to play. If Connor gets hurt, Benson's not going to be a 3-down back. And I think DeMarcado probably third down, maybe the third down back even with Connor.
Right. Someone's going to be in that role, whether it's DeMarcado or Michael Carter. And that'll be the case. Connor healthy, Connor not healthy.
That's what it was last year. I don't talk about that enough. But weeks 12 through 18, Connor, I think, came off an injury. Kyler Murray was playing at this point. So Connor's healthy. Weeks 12 to 18 last year. Third down snaps, Amari DeMarcado, 47. Michael Carter, 19. James Conner, 22. It's not the James Conner role that we used to see when he was so involved in the passing game. Wide receiver notes. Kansas City receivers with Patrick Mahomes in the preseason. No, this was just Saturday, not the whole preseason. Rashee Rice, 5 targets, a 3.4 yard ADOT. Xavier Worthy, 4 targets, 1 catch for 39 yards. Travis Kelce, 1 target. Is anyone getting and it was behind the back pass, by the way, anyone getting nervous about Kelce in a way that you haven't, before? Not performance, but target share.
I mean, I've called him a bust repeatedly, and he ranks as my tight end 4. So nothing's changed other than that. Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say I'm a little bit more bullish on Kelce, but he's not my tight end 1. I still think he's going to have plenty of good weeks in this offense. This is Mahomes' favorite target to throw to. I don't think that's changing.
I think the key, and this could be completely dumb, the key for Travis Kelce in fantasy is what happens in week 1 and week 2. The Chiefs play the Ravens and the Bengals the first 2 weeks of the season. If they win both of those games, I bet we get a Travis Kelce downshift mid-season again.
Okay.
I think we got a downshift last year because he was playing hurt.
Chicago tight ends, don't draft Cole Kmet. Doesn't look like that's a great idea, right? Seems like it may not even be the starter. He and Everett are rotating a lot. Isaiah Pacheco was in on 3rd and long twice on the opening drive. That's great. Clyde Edwards-Helaire did not play. But if Pacheco's going to be in on 3rd and long, that is great news.
I do think Jamey had Clyde as a loser. Deneric Prince looked a lot better than Carson Steele in that game. But on the broadcast, and these were Chiefs guys, on the broadcast, they said like the top 2 running backs are set with Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. These guys are battling for RB3. So Clyde hasn't played, hasn't been healthy, but they seem to think Clyde was the clear RB2.
Okay. Emails, fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. And actually, here's one from our draftathon from Mark McRoberts in Canada. Half PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown league. We're keeping 1 player, and the player moves up 3 rounds from last season. So who's the best value? Jerome Ford in the 10th, Jordan Love in the 10th, Tajay Spears in the 10th, or Jaylen Warren in the 7th?
I think I like Love.
I would go Spears.
It's down to those 2.
From Nick in Chicago.
Here's the thing.
Okay.
If you think that Tajay Spears is going to break out, then you keep him, and then next year you can keep him for a 7th. I don't know if you're going to want to keep Love for a 7th next year.
Here's Nick in Chicago. Which of the rankings would you recommend if we're playing in half PPR? Standard ranks or PPR?
PPR.
And does the top 20 or top 10 players in their rankings change much if you're drafting from half PPR?
More running backs.
Yep.
Slightly. Like, are you taking Pacheco over Marvin Harrison?
I wouldn't go that far in half PPR.
Should be halfway in between the PPR and the non-PPR.
Are you taking Jonathan Taylor over AJ Brown in half PPR?
I don't know if I'm going to go that far.
So I might take Jonathan Taylor like over most of the wide receivers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, those half points per catch is enough for me to still put Brown ahead of Taylor.
And this is from Garrett in a small town in, oh, wait, this is from Jim. Where's Jim from?
Jim is from, where was I recently? Massillon, Ohio.
Any hesitation drafting Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel since they're on the same team?
Try to avoid that if you can.
I wouldn't want to take Deebo Samuel at the 2-3 turn. So yeah, I think I'm out on that combo.
Unless Ayuk gets traded, right?
He's not getting traded.
I don't think I had heard that he was going to get traded. And now it looks like he's not going to get traded. So who the hell knows? If Deebo makes it to you to late round 4, you shouldn't pass up that value.
Exactly. Agreed.
Garrett in a small town in Iowa. Dave?
Dubuque.
I knew you were going to say that. Wants to know.
I was going to say Dubuque.
You always say Dubuque, Iowa.
I think I've gone Cedar Rapids before.
Wants to know why there isn't more talk about Trey McBride being tight end 1, Heath.
I guess because Adam doesn't let me talk enough on the podcast.
Talk about it.
Is the main reason. He's on 140 target pace when he was the starter last year. Marvin Harrison can take 10 targets a game, and he can still see more than 120 targets. He set a stated goal for 8 of 100 catches this year. I think he's got a chance to reach it. And like Rashee Rice, having a wide receiver 1 to take the top off of the defense is only going to help Trey McBride's efficiency.
Have you shook yourself a little bit by what you've heard about Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch?
No.
I feel like we're hearing more about them and not enough about McBride.
I have not.
I was playing devil's advocate. I think he's locked into 7 targets a game. I'm worried about the touchdown volume for him, but I think he's going to be a pretty good tight end this year.
All right, everybody. Love you all. We'll talk to you tomorrow with a format show. We'll tell you how to draft in different formats: auction, superflex, non-PPR, half PPR, etc. 10-team, 14-team. Check out that tinyurl.com/draftathon 2024. Click the auction house section. You'll see all the things that we have up for you to purchase and benefit St. Jude. Talk to you tomorrow on Fantasy Football Today.